Have you ever wondered what it's like to own your own business? Be your own boss? Welcome to Season 7 of Business Mentorship, Keepin' It Real, where we meet with corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner and join us as part of the shareyourstoriesonline series. Hello, I'm Trish Tonai, and today we're going to meet a small business owner, celebrate their great idea, and introduce you to the person behind the logo. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to the show. Our guest joins us from Sacramento, California. Jamie Perez is the founder of Beyond Words Productions, an award-winning business with your guide to video storytelling. She's a former TV news anchor, reporter, and producer who has taken her passion for storytelling and combined her journalistic experience with emotional intelligence, helping small business owners become unforgettable. Jamie's going to share her story on entrepreneurship and give us a behind the scenes into the life of a small business owner. I'd like to welcome and introduce everyone to Jamie.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
You know, it's an absolute pleasure because one of the things that I was reading in your story is you create a bridge between EQ or emotional intelligence and empathy. How do you do that on screen with your clients?
Yeah, so I tell my clients that my videos for them are different than normal videos that they've probably made. And I think a lot of that comes from my journalistic background of asking really good interview questions that really get to the core of their why. Someone's why for starting their business is not because I like to help people, which a lot of people think is their why. And it goes much, much deeper than that. So I think me being an emotional person, as someone who has done a lot of deep inner work, I know how to ask really emotionally sound and in-depth questions to get an emotionally sound and in-depth answer out of them. And then when I put their stories together, it helps other people kind of go through that almost therapeutic process with them, because their journey and their vulnerability on camera is helping other people be empathetic towards them and their why and their story. But I'm really tapping into an emotional core from my interviewees. So it's bridging the gap between the interviewee and the audience, of having an understanding for what the audience needs to hear, but then also what that business owner is feeling. And that's how that connection is made.
You know, what's really interesting is I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, you know, video is now exploding everywhere on every social media platform. You know, everyone's saying you need to do video, you need to do video. And I think video is the connection to the target market. It's the connection to the client, right?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that people are looking to get to know the person behind the logo? Because we all pay all this money for marketing on these great logos and colors and slogans and taglines. But isn't it the emotional connection between the customer and the business owner that actually creates the sale?
Yeah, 1,000%. And I could go in a million different directions with this, but I will boil it down to people don't connect to things. People connect to people. And you can have the coolest branding and the coolest logo, which is all great. You should have cool stuff that matches as well. But you really have to be a good person, and you have to make other people like, know, and trust you, because otherwise people won't do business with you no matter how cool your stuff is, right? So
True.
yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, we've all bought things from people, not because we needed what they had, but because we liked them. And that's how you retain people as well. So yeah, I think that's incredibly important. You know, when you boil down a business, businesses are human at the core. You strip away the patents, the logos, the machines, and all of the things, right? And what it comes down to is people wanting to connect to other human beings, because if they don't, it's like they won't work for you or with you if you can't make that connection.
So true. So who would be your target market? Because I mean, let's face it, every business is selling a product or service, and the industries are wide and vast. Do you have a specific type of business that you like to work with, or is it your connection with the people?
I attract a lot of nonprofits because they understand the value of telling a story for cash flow. They understand that. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to work on is educating more for-profit businesses that they also have stories, that they're kind of really in a corporate commercially mindset of like ads, commercials, and promo videos, which are fine and they're great and they have their place. But that's really not what makes someone connect with you. There's a difference between those styles of videos and a video that tells a story. So I'm trying to do a little bit more education about how for-profits like do have stories to tell, even if you don't think your business is emotive in nature, like a nonprofit would be. There are always stories to tell there. And so I'm trying to get more for-profits. There's not really a specific industry that I'm working with because I truly believe that every business in any industry has stories that they can pull from.
Yeah, that's so true. And, with you as an individual, because the thing is the preparation, right? We need to know the story that we're going to tell. We need to have a way in which that we want to make that connection with the audience. If you were going to give a tip to our viewing and listening audience who is saying, yeah, you know what, I need to do more video. I don't know how to tell my story. Is there something that you can mention that will help those folks sort of get on the road to creating a script? Or do they just need to be authentic and speak from the heart?
I think it's really important to be open to be vulnerable. I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there and share their why or share their truth because oftentimes it stems from a very deep rooted core trauma of some sort. And a lot of people hide those things.
Sure.
But I think that, when you hear someone else sharing that sort of emotional depth and vulnerability, like you lean in to those stories. You're interested in what they have to say because those are all part of a human experience that we can relate to. We might not relate to what your business is. We might not like what you're selling. Like we might not ever be a client of yours, but we can always relate to you. So I think that having the courage to be vulnerable and just being yourself, we don't want perfection. Like we want connection. So we don't care if you go on camera and if you have a bunch of ums and ahs, like that's okay because that's how we normally talk. We don't
Sure.
want a perfect script from you. We want to see that you're relatable and honest.
When I visited your website, one of the things that really resonated with me is we all have heard the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but you've added videos will leave you beyond words. Where did that come from? Where did that connection for you come from?
The name of my business.
Yeah, and just
So,
the beyond words, right? I mean,
yeah.
why is it videos leave you beyond words, but a picture's worth 1,000 words? How does video make that connection and bridge that gap?
Well, video is picture in motion, and it is our job to put the emotion into that. So, video is pretty unrefutable proof that you are who you say you are. Um, because people, if you go on camera, on video, and people can see you, hear your voice, read your body language and your mannerisms, and feel your energy through the screen before they ever even meet you, that is so powerful and impactful, especially if you're a business owner. Like you want that connection made before you ever even have a conversation with people. The videos leaving people beyond words. So Beyond Words Productions is the name of my business. And my mom actually came up with that when I was forming my business 5 years ago, because she said, if a picture says 1,000 words, your videos will leave people beyond words. So that's a thank you, mom.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. You
Yes.
just never know where our great ideas are going to come from, right? And I love
Yes.
that it was obviously a conversation with your mom when you were getting ready to do your business plan that sort of created that tagline, right?
Yeah.
So you've shared with us how you got to your actual name of your business, Beyond Words Productions. If someone was to come to you and say, I have a business, this is what I sell, whether it's a product or service, and I want to increase my image. I'm trying to make connections with the people in my target market. What would be the first type of video? Because there's lots of different types of videos to share.
I think sharing your story is your foundational piece. That's going to be your hero story, is what I call it, and that is usually something that goes on the front page of your website. People put it in QR codes on their business cards so that every single person that they meet at a networking event has a chance to watch their story. They send it in email newsletters, they play it at events. I mean, there's so many different things that you can use this hero story for. And the beautiful thing about this is that it's not the same as like creating content for social media, because with social media you have to continuously pump out videos and content like on a regular basis. This is something that you create once and you can use the same video for so many things for years because it's your why, and your why is never going to change. You can obviously create other pieces of social media content that incorporate your why, but having that foundational piece is super critical. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. Like, make people connect to you first, before you do anything else.
In terms of social media, you mentioned, we need to have lots of content, right? We need to pump out a lot of content to make those connections. Do you help those individual business owners create the video content as well for social media?
So, no, in the bigger image of things, and meaning like I'm not someone that you pay on a monthly like subscription type of
Right.
basis where I'm going to create a bunch of social media content for you. However, with the hero story, which is like the main thing that I do, the interview that I do for that usually is about 30 minutes with the business owner, and the video only ends up being about 2 to 3 minutes. So there's a lot of unused sound that didn't make it in. So usually what I do after I give them that 2 to 3 minute piece is I tell them like, there's so many great sound bites from you that didn't get used, that I can create little 15, 30 second, 60 second individual clips so that I can almost sell them like a package of things.
Sure, sure.
So I can make social media content from that. But beyond that, I'm not like continuously creating for them.
I love that the sound bites that are not shared in the hero story are things that you can then use through social media. So to your point, the 30-minute interview, dialogue, conversation, authenticity that you get from the individual actually does translate into things beyond the hero story, right? You can actually use it as part of your marketing plan. That's a pretty brilliant way to take all of the time that we spend, because sometimes, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I find the more that you talk and the more that you start to share the authenticity of your story, sometimes we surprise ourselves with some of the things that we say.
Oh yeah, they're often actually that happens a lot with my interviews, because there's people who have admitted things to me that I wasn't pulling for, but they just get in this rotation of talking that it
Right.
just comes out, and they're like, "Wow, I've never shared that with anyone before." And it's therapeutic. The interview process with me is very therapeutic because
Right.
they're talking about things that they've probably held down and hid for so long, and they're
Sure.
finally like letting that come up. So there's a
Right.
lot of other things that come up in the process that they're like, that felt good to say. And
Yeah, that's pretty
it's a cool
cool.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, okay, so you've been in front of the camera just as often as you've been behind the camera. And I'm sure that you have a few tips for folks who are getting the outfit ready or are going to
Mhm.
do the hair and makeup. And, because our online image is something that's really important, especially for the hero story. So, are there a few tips that you can share with someone when they're getting ready to do that on screen, on camera hero story that will help with the translation of the words?
Yeah. So I mean, physically when you want to think about like what outfit and all that what you want to look like, plain colors work best on camera. Don't wear patterns, don't wear anything flashy. Like, you don't want to detract from your message. And if you're wearing something that is distracting, it can distract people.
Sure.
But also patterns don't show up well on the camera. They can actually create kind of like a distorted look in the camera for whatever reason. No dangly jewelry, right? Like very simple things that are not going to make a lot of noise, that are not going to create a lot of movement. Again, it goes back to the distraction piece. Um, and then I think just honestly, one of the biggest things that helps me, not just in front of the camera, but like if I'm giving a presentation in front of somebody where you have to be on, right? Like I think meditating is so important beforehand, and not thinking too much about performing. We don't want a performance. We want personality. Like we want to see you. So I think when we tap into our inner core and our place of home, we perform a lot better because we're not trying to perform.
Yeah, I've also heard folks say, some people use a teleprompter because, they can see words or images or things that will sort of jog their memory about the story that they want to tell. But I've also heard folks say, you know what? Let the person who's interviewing you guide the conversation, pull on the energy that you're sharing, because then the words that you're going to use are going to be more natural. Which one do you prefer? Which one do you suggest? Do you suggest some sort of teleprompter with information, or let's just do it organic and let it roll?
In 95% of my cases, I say no teleprompter. The 5% comes from if you know how to write like you talk, which most people don't. So for my social media videos that I did like a behind the scenes where I'm showing people like I'm actually using a teleprompter for this, but you can't tell because I know how to write like I talk and I'm comfortable with reading a teleprompter without making it look like I'm reading. So
Sure.
unless you are at that level, I don't recommend using a teleprompter, which most people are not at that level because
Sure.
reading from a teleprompter is not something that we normally do.
No, for sure. And it's not something that we use in our business on a day-to-day basis, right? So
Right.
it's just not going to come across as being organically natural. It's going to perhaps be forced, or it's not going to help with that personality piece that you mentioned, which I think is so important.
Yeah,
You've
absolutely.
shared so much awesome information with us in a really short period of time, Jamie, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you had the chance to sort of give our viewing and listening audience some of those marketing tips, because the digital world, without question, is the wave of the future. And how we make those connections with potential clients or just with our followers as a thought leader is really important for the future. So I want to thank you very much for sharing those individual tips. One of the things that we do in the guest blog, which you're familiar with, is we share 3 words of advice. So, what I would like you to do, your 3 words are share your story. And I know you've given us a lot of things to think about in terms of sharing your story, but why did you feel, as a small business owner, that you wanted to get into the business of helping people share their video stories in such a way that you've created an entire business model around the concept?
So when I was a news reporter, the days that I loved the most were the days where I would talk to business owners who did share their stories, right? Like that wasn't every day. I'm covering crime and politics and all sorts of other news. But the days that I liked the most were the days that I got to do that because I saw people open up and the energy in the room like literally shifted when they did that. And it translated on camera so that when people watched those stories, they got a lot of traction because they were open and they were relatable and people could connect to that. And I think people crave authenticity in today's world, like now more than ever, especially with the rise of AI. I think we want authentic, real human beings that we can be drawn to. So I think it's just so important for people to share their stories and not try and be perfect and polished and show the highlight reel all the time because that's just not real life. And that's just not how you draw people in. Like your story makes you magnetic and unforgettable.
You've shared with us that you've been in business for 5 years. So the last question I'm going to ask you today to share with our viewing and listening audience is, where does Jamie see herself in the next 2 to 3 years in your business?
I am working on speaking on more stages, whether that's a podcast or an actual stage, and whatever the stage is, because of sharing your story is super important. So I usually go on stages and I share my own story, my own journey, but then I also share stories of people that I've created videos for, and I show people, like, look what happens when you watch these. Don't you want that for your business? Don't you want people to respond the way that you're responding now to these? That's how you connect. So I'm really trying to do more of that educational, like, look how much you leaned into me when I told you my story, and all of these people too. Like, and I want them to see the impact of storytelling. So in 2 to 3 years, I'm hoping to like half of my business is me going around speaking on stages, and then the other half is actually working in the business with creating those videos for them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to stay tuned. Stay tuned for more from Jamie, because once you start to get onto those stages, let's reconnect and talk about how, being on the stage in front of a group of folks is perhaps a little bit different than being behind the camera. So we'll watch you from the sidelines, and when that transition starts to happen, perhaps you'll come back on our show and share some of those highlights with us too.
Perfect. I would love to do that.
Well, I would like to thank you on behalf of our viewing and listening audience for joining us for this edition of Keeping It Real. And I'd like to send my personal thanks to all of our sponsors for their ongoing support, and ask that you share and invite your friends and colleagues to subscribe to our show, Business Mentorship Keeping It Real, found on YouTube and your favorite podcast channel. Jamie and I would like to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we meet another business owner and celebrate their great idea.